Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem, a postmortem of my Blitz game number 305. I was white here, kicked off with e4, and after e5, knight f3 attacking the pawn. My opponent doesn't reply knight c6 defending or knight f6 with a counterattack. He defends in the third way, which is to play d6. This is known as Philidor's defense, or the Philidor. And the main move here is d4, although you can play bishop c4 as well. d4 and taking appears to be the top choice these days. It used to be that black would just try to hold on to that pawn with knight to d7. Knight f6, I guess, is playable too. Leads to somewhat cramped positions for black. So in this line, black gives up the center immediately, but he has ideas like, for example, pushing the c-pawn and kicking that knight and gaining a few tempos. So it's not a bad way to play. My opponent continued here with bishop e7, a bit of a rare line. Normally knight f6 is the move here, asking me how I plan to defend my e-pawn. But this is an interesting line, bishop e7. I just continue developing. And then bishop f6, putting pressure on my center. So that was his idea here with the bishop maneuver. So it's kind of like the Fort Knox variation of the French defense, but with the pawns in a different structure. Let's see, with the French defense, the pawn would be on e6, and the bishop would be on this diagonal looking this way. Anyway, so sort of a left to right flip there. I just continue developing. Bishop e2. This knight is not in any immediate danger. I expected him to play knight c6 at any time to put some pressure on here, but he continues to not play that. Knight e7, castles, knight g6. So this is a very slow development, and I really should be able to find some way to punish this. And the engine is recommending knight d7. I mean, if you think about it, he took 2 moves to develop one piece and 2 moves to develop another piece, because it went here and here. And whereas all my pieces have been developed with 1 move, I've castled, and so I should be in good shape here in some way. I chose to go with a different plan, but knight d5 looks like an interesting idea. I chose king h1 with the idea of playing f4 and e5, hitting the bishop and maybe getting pressure on the d file. He just castled here. Went on with f4 and c5. Now this move, kicking my knight. But now I have a good square for the knight. I can come back here to f3. Although the engine points out an even better square. Let's check this out. Knight to b5. Putting immediate pressure on the d6 pawn, which is, I guess it can't really be defended. If he drops his bishop back here to hold on to it, then knight d5. And I'll be able to exchange off that bishop and grab the pawn. So that's just winning a pawn here. I eventually spotted this weakness on d6 and exploited it, but not in this move. So not the most precise move here, but still keeping an advantage for white. He decided to trade here, and this is okay. I mean, it damaged my pawn structure, but he gave up a good bishop, a bishop that he spent 2 moves developing. So I have quite a lead in development, and that's enough to compensate for the pawn structure here, as well as having the 2 bishops, which the bishops like having open lines like that. So he continues knight c6, and I put my rook on an open file, still trying to figure out the best development plan. It's a bit of an unusual situation. I was thinking, well, if I could clear my queen off the d file, maybe I could get pressure on this d file with the rook. He pushes on with f5 though immediately, so I have to respond to that. Bishop c4 check is an idea here, while my pawn is still controlling the d5 square. But instead I took, and this is still good. I was expecting him to take back with the bishop, but instead he took back with the rook. And now the rook is somewhat awkwardly placed there. The engine is saying I can play bishop d3 immediately to go after that rook there. But I tried knight g5 first. Wanted to make some room. Well, I wanted to support the pawn, and this also looked like a good square for the knight. It's got interesting squares it can hop into here and here. He goes h6, kicking the knight, and so I decide to go to e4, hitting the d pawn. And now he should play d5, just to hold on to it. But then I can, if nothing better, I can grab over here. There's also g4, the engine after d5, g4, hitting his rook is also interesting. Rook doesn't have a lot of squares. Okay, he plays bishop e6, and now I spot the way to exploit his rook here with bishop to g4. And yeah, this just wins material. There's no good square for the rook. If the rook goes to this square hitting my queen, which I was worried about at first, I can take his bishop with check, and that also forks the rook, so that just loses. So the rook has no square to go to. What's the engine saying? The engine's saying queen d7, just giving up the exchange. He gave up the exchange in a different way with the move knight f8, defending his bishop, and now I go ahead and take the exchange. So I should go on to win this game, but I very shortly, oh, right here I make a mistake. So I can just take this pawn, and I can take it in one of two ways, with the queen or the knight. And so if you can take a quick look at this and figure out what's the best way to take that pawn. Well, it's not so hard. I should take with the knight. I was a little worried that this might get pinned here, but I'm hitting the bishop. He's going to have to do something about that. Knight d4 is the engine suggestion. That's a funny move, knight d4. Ah, I see. It it leaves my knight hanging here, but I can grab his bishop. He can take back, and I'm in good shape here. I'm up the exchange, got open lines for my pieces, and even though they're all in the back rank, they're going to spring into action very quickly, and his knights are going to be chased around the board. Okay, so instead I took with the queen. I just completely forgot that my knight was hanging here. And so having won the exchange and giving up a piece, black is a little better now. He's got two pieces for a rook. And queen takes c5. I should have grabbed the pawn here. I went ahead and exchanged queens. I wasn't sure what the best thing there was. He took back with the rook. Apparently taking with the knight is slightly better. Because now I can play rook takes b7 here, which I didn't play. I developed my bishop, hitting the c pawn. And he went rook e8, a very mysterious move here. He has some good moves with his rook. He could play rook d2, and this is pretty strong. This pawn over here is falling. The pawn on c2. There's nothing I can do about it. So black is in good shape, but now he makes this mysterious move, rook e8, and lets me back in the game, basically. So I grab the pawn. He can still take on c2 here, but he plays knight e6. And then I go bishop d6, looking for a good square for my bishop. It was getting kicked. What did the engine suggest there? It said bishop all the way back to g1. Yeah, it's hard to find a good square for that bishop, so it's still a bit exposed here on e6. But he played b6, defending his pawn. And now I go rook b e1. Okay, going after his bishop. And he went knight c5 here. And this is a little bit dangerous. I can already take the knight on c5 and then have a pin on the bishop. Well, he can always get out of the pin with bishop to g6. So anyway, I decided not to take right away, but to push on with my pawns. And now I went knight e5. And this really is a mistake at this point. So there's a simple tactic here. If you didn't see the game, maybe you want to pause and spot the tactic. Okay, I'm going to show it. It's just bishop takes knight. It's called undermining the defender, or removing the guard. That's what Dan Heisman calls it. He calls it one of the most underrated tactics. But the point is, this bishop is defended by the knight, and you can just take it. You take the knight, and it's just an exchange over here, but after the exchange is completed, this bishop is hanging. So he's going to lose a piece. He chose to play bishop g2, check. This didn't help a whole lot, but he was going to lose a piece anyway. So he picks my bishop up, but now I'm up the exchange once again. So back to how I started the game, winning the exchange. I'm back to that situation. I dropped a piece, I won a piece, and now I'm back to where I'm just the exchange up. And fortunately, there's not enough material here for me to screw up too badly. So I just plan to double my rooks here, try and win the knight, and he can defend it. He gets there just in time. So I decided not to double the rooks, but try and get the rook active. He goes king f6, defending the knight and freeing up his rook. And now I can try and penetrate with my pieces. Get the rook in here. He goes king g5 and rook a6, going after his weak pawns. And now, what did he play here? He played rook e7, defending. And it went rook a5, hitting the other pawn. And he went c4. Now that's defended by the knight, that's defended by the rook. I played rook a6 here, just keeping keeping this pawn from advancing. I can maybe advance my pawn, but also I had the idea perhaps of coming over here and delivering a check, although the knight is currently defending that square. But immediately my opponent played knight to g4, hitting my rook, and so now I could play this rook g6 check. Instead I decided to move my knight rook d2, and this keeps some advantage, but it gives up this pawn. And rook, I brought my king forward. Right here. Well, it's not really a draw. The engine is saying here king g2 and back would be a draw. But of course my king wouldn't go to the same square. So so when the engine suddenly shows 0, 0, 0, it didn't really change the evaluation. Anyway, he took the pawn. It's kind of a bug in the program, really, to show that as a draw, because it's only a draw if I choose to, and having the advantage, I wouldn't choose to draw there. Rook c3, and now rook takes a7, because his rook got active, but he left his a pawn undefended. Now I have a passed pawn here, so this gives me a fairly straightforward path to victory. He pushes his pawns on the king side. I push my pawn. Goes knight e3 check. I just have to watch out for these tricks with the knight. As long as your opponent has a knight, you have to stay aware, stay awake. So king f2, and he took on c2 with the knight, so he's getting a pawn, but I can keep pushing my pawn, which eventually will become dangerous. Knight b4 to stop my pawn. I keep pushing. If I can win and just be a rook up, that's also a winning advantage. So he goes rook h3. It's interesting, rook a3 here. Getting his rook behind the pawn is good, because I can't easily defend the pawn. You have to rook a3, for example. Let's just check it out. If I were to try this rook c7, rook d6, trying to hold on to it, he's got this check, and now he really has a bunch of checks here. Maybe a draw. Yeah, maybe he can draw that way. And if I try, what else? After rook a3, I could try rook f7 check. Interesting idea. I play something similar to this in the game. The king attacks my rook, and now rook c7, and then losing the pawn but keeping the rooks. Be a tricky game to play that way. Okay, he went rook h3, hitting this pawn, which I don't mind giving up at this point. Oh no, I defended. I'm sorry, king g2. We're giving him a second chance to play rook a3, actually, so I probably should have just given it up. He plays rook h4. Cancel that. Rook h4. Okay, there, right. Okay, protecting his pawn and getting away from my king. But now I have this neat little trick here with rook f7 check, and when his king attacks my rook, I can advance my pawn, and there's no way for him to stop this pawn from queening. So interesting tactic. He should just probably take my rook here. He played c3, and I can just go ahead and queen. I have two rooks hanging, but he can only take one of them. He chose to take the rook on d2, and now I went queen g8 check. Oh, I have a mate in 9 with queen e8, but this is good enough. Queen g8 check. King went to h5, and now the rook over here, getting behind the pawn, stopping it from queening. He gets in a check or two, but cancel that. I went to f3, but there's no way for him to keep checking me forever. Now he can check, but I will take the pawn, and there's no more checks after that. So my opponent resigned. So I thought that was an interesting game. Always important to be alert for those tactics. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I will see you again soon. Bye.